I'll tell you the truth, I see from the amount of people that are here, you don't remember me. To dedicate, like was said, the Divrei Torah, Le'ilui Nishmas, Rabbi Zev ben Yaakov, and Yitzchak ben Moshe. And I want to give a special Yashar Koach to Jonathan James and his wife for making all the arrangements and making my stay here very, very comfortable. Since it's less than Shloshim Yom Kodem HaChag, so I thought it would be a proper thing to speak about Hanukkah. In order to introduce my perspective on Hanukkah, I'll start with a question. The Alanisim of Hanukkah and the Alanisim of Purim are pretty much parallel in their structure, except for one word. The Alanisim of Hanukkah starts with Bimei, Matisyahu, Ben Yochanan, Kohen Gadol, Chashmonayu, Banov. Same thing by Purim. Bimei, Mordechai, Esther, B'Shushan Habira. The Tefillah first introduces the time era we're talking about, and who are the tzaddikim that were important to that time. And then once we introduced the tzaddikim, so now we introduce the Rishoyim. Kishomar aleim haman harosha, kishom the malchus yovan harishol amcha Yisrael. Okay, now that we know who the tzaddikim were and who the Rishoyim were, what was the problem? Bikesh lahashmid laharog la'abed. The next word by Chanukah should have been Bikshu lashkichon torosecha. So what did the bad guys want to do? They wanted to either annihilate us by Purim or to make us forget the Torah by Chanukah. But it doesn't say that. It just says lahashkichon torosecha. It doesn't say Bikshu lahashkichon torosecha, but lihashkichon torosecha. Why is the word bikshu left out? So perhaps the idea is the following. Haman did not present a threat to Klal Yisrael until he made his gzeira, until he was mevakesh lahashmid laharog la'abed. The day before he made his gzeira, there was no sakana to Klal Yisrael. On the other hand, the Yevonim presented a danger to Klal Yisrael before they sought to do anything aggressively against us. Proof was that before the Yevonim made any gzeiros, before they turned their attention against us, they already were Mishiyavnim. They were Hellenists who were influenced by Yavon. The threat of Haman was what he wanted to do. The threat of Yavon was who they were and the influence they had over Klal Yisrael. It wasn't what they wanted to do against us that created the danger. The danger was created already way before that, just because of the negative influence of Yavon. So what was the influence of Yavon? Yavon represented a totally external view of the world. They extolled physical, external beauty, external might, even when it came to chokhmah chitzonis, external wisdom. They didn't believe in any inner holiness in the world. Everything was external. What your mind could grasp logically, that's what they believed in and nothing more. And they deified, they made gods out of the physical world. Even their gods were basically physical beings, just glorified supermen and superwomen with all of the foibles of human beings. They created their gods in their image, the opposite of the way the Rebbeinu Shalom created us in his image. So Yavan, I think the name Yavan represents this idea also, that Yavan represented a totally external view of the world. Yavan is comprised of 3 letters, Yud, Vav, and Nun. Those 3 letters have no inside. They're just lines. Lines with no inside. They're totally external letters. Not only that, but they also come in 3 sizes. When you assess the spiritual world, you assess it in quality. When you assess the physical world, you assess it in quantity. And there are 3 generic quantities: small, medium, and large. That's Yavam. Small Yud, medium-sized Vav, and large Nun. The external world that comes in 3 sizes, those 3 lines are also parallel lines. Parallel lines never meet. There's no achdus. When you deal with a physical, external world, everything is separate to itself. The only thing that unites things is that spiritual power that's beyond the physical. They have nothing to unite them. Parallel lines in 3 generic sizes with no inside to them. That was Yavan. In addition, the word Yavan, spelled backwards, is Noi. They took beauty and turned it topsy-turvy, upside down. They only saw the external beauty of things and not the internal beauty of things. Because beauty is a value, but only when it's an expression of that inner beauty that a person has. The Vilna Gaon explains the pasuk, Sheker Achein Behevel Ayofi, Isha Yiras Hashem Itisalo. He says what it means is the following: when is Yofi and Chein, Sheker and Hevel, when that's all there is, the external, but when there is Isha Yiras Hashem, He Tisalol, you should praise her for her Chein and her Yofi, because the Chein and the Yofi are then external expressions of the internal, and then they are also important. But when it's only the external, then it's Sheker and Hevel. So the hashpah of Yavan was to look at the world in a totally external way. The Bach says that why were we vulnerable to the designs of Yavan? And it's important to know why we were vulnerable, what the problem was that needed to be corrected. Because if you don't understand the purpose of the tzara, then there's no way and no reason to understand the Yeshua. Example I always like to give: somebody's walking down the street, minding his own business. Somebody comes with an iron pole and breaks both his legs. He feels that the person with the iron pole is going to finish him off. And he comes over him, he says, "Listen, I mean you no harm. I'm an orthopedic surgeon who needs practice. So I broke both your legs. I'm going to take you to my clinic and I'm going to heal you for free. In 6 months, you're going to be walking like nothing ever happened." How much of a thank you does he owe that orthopedic surgeon? 0. Probably owes him a lawsuit. Why? Because if he didn't break his legs, he would be walking like nothing happened 6 months earlier. Don't break my legs and don't heal me. We believe that the Ribono Shel Olam causes everything that happens in this world. So who got us into the tzara of Yavan? The Ribono Shel Olam. Who took us out of the tzara of Yavan? The Ribono Shel Olam. Why do you have to thank him? Don't put me into the tzara. The Rebbeinu Shalom could have avoided that tzara to begin with. He could have finished off Antiochus before he made one gzeira against us. But he let him make the gzeiras, so he broke our legs. So then the Rebbeinu Shalom came and he saved us from the tzara of Yavan. Why thank him? I didn't come here to convince you not to celebrate Hanukkah. So there's an answer. The answer is that the marshal is not a good marshal. The marshal should be the following. Imagine a person who has a disease of the legs, which I created, but I have a right to make any marshal I want. And the disease of the legs has the following pathology. It incubates for 10 years. You don't even know you have it. The only way to discern it is by seeing that a person walks in a certain distorted way. At the end of 10 years, to the exact second when the 10 years are up, the bones of the leg disintegrate. And the person's a cripple the rest of his life. There's no cure because there's no bones. And now, person's walking down the street, unbeknownst to him, he has this disease. The orthopedic surgeon walking behind him notices from the way he's walking that he has the disease. And not only that, there's 5 minutes left until the 10 years is up. There is one cure for this disease. If you break the person's legs before the 10 years are up and you reset the bones, they'll grow back normally. So this orthopedic surgeon has no other choice. He has to find an iron pole and swiftly break this guy's legs. And then he tells him, you're a very lucky man. He said, could you explain to me why I'm lucky, writhing in pain on the sidewalk here with my legs broken? He said, yeah, because in 5 minutes you would have been a cripple for life and there'd be no cure. I broke your legs in order to initiate a cure. I'm going to take you to my clinic. I'm going to set your legs. In 6 months, you're going to be walking like nothing happened. I'm going to charge you for it, too. And now he owes him a tremendous thank you. Not only for healing him, but for breaking his legs, too, because that was part of the process that enabled the healing. Sometimes we can cause ourselves as individuals or as a nation spiritual sickness. And the Rebbeinu Shalom knows that if he lets things just progress the way they are, then we are doomed to extinction. So sometimes he has to break our legs to initiate the process of healing that then can take away the dangerous consequences that could have been had there not been a breaking of the legs. So what was the sickness that Klal Yisrael had? The Bach says, "Shenisrashlu ba'avodas Hashem." They were nisrashel in the avodah, simple meaning the avodah, the Beis Hamikdash. But I think that there's a deeper meaning of what avodah is. Avodah is total hisbatlus to the Ribono Shel Olam. That's what avodah is. That's what the avodah of the Beis Hamikdash represented, where everything in the world is subjugated to the Ribono Shel Olam completely. Every part of the world, the domain, right, and the Tzomeach, and the Chai, and the Chai HaMedaber all unite in being totally subjugated to the Ribono Shel Olam, negated to the Ribono Shel Olam. In order to do that, you have to recognize that a person has to be mevatel himself totally to Ratzon Hashem. So that's avodah. We say in the Shmoneh Esrei of Yontif, Ato v'chartonu mikol ha'amim, ohavta osonu, v'rotziso bonu, v'romamtonu mikol ha'lashonos, v'kidashtonu v'mitzvosecho, v'keirabtonu malkeinu la'avodasecho. The way I understand that is the following. Ato v'chartonu mikol ha'amim is connected to the first of the next three phrases. How is that? Ato v'chartonu mikol ha'amim is v'romamtonu mikol ha'lashonos. The lashon of a person represents his neshama. The language a person speaks is a product of a person's neshama. And I always like to say lashon comes from a lashon of losh. It's one of the malachas of Shabbos. You take a solid and a liquid and you mix it together into a compound That's what the Lashon is. The Lashon takes the inner spiritual thoughts and ideas, mixes them together with sound waves, and makes speech from it. The Lashon is a losh. It's a kneader, like it knead the dough with the solid and the liquid. So Romam Tono Mikol HaLashonos gave us a Neshama Kedosha. You gave us Lashon HaKodesh, which represents our Neshama Kedosha. Ohavta Osano. Besides the fact that you gave us the potential of Kedusha, you also had a chibur with us. Ahava is a kesher, echad. You connected yourself to us. How? The kidashtanu b'mitzvosecha. Since ani kadosh, the Rebbeinu says, kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani. In order to have that connection, we have to be kedoshim because the Rebbeinu Shalom is kodesh. So he gave us the opportunity to become kodesh. Kidashtanu b'mitzvosecha. And that showed his ava, that achtos, that chibur, that's called ava. And then v'rotzisa banu. So I think in most of the Siddurim that have translations, it says, and you desired us. I don't think that's what it says. Because then it should have said, v'rotzisa osanu. Just like v'yohavta osanu. Rotzisa banu means something else. Rotzisa banu means your Ratzon, Rabbanu Shalom, comes through us. We create Ratzon Hashem. The Rabbanu Shalom wants to bring his Ratzon into the world through us. Rotzisa banu. How? The Keravtonu Malkeinu Avodasecha. That's Avodah. That's what it says by a korban. Reach nichoach nachas ruach she'omarti v'nasa ratzoni, not v'skayim ratzoni, that you fulfilled my will, but nasa ratzoni, you created my will. That's what we say in davening, which is makom korbanos, yehi ratzonu fanecha. We create the Ratzon Hashem. So in order to do that, you have to mevatel yourself, to become a shliach, an extension, kiviyachol, of the Rabbanu Shalom. We're an extension of Ratzon Hashem. So we not only look at the commands of the Rabbanu Shalom, but the Ratzon Hashem, meaning the following. The Navi complains that Klal Yisrael keep the Torah, tzav l'tzav, kav l'kav, ze'er sham, a line here, a line there, a command here, a command there. What's the problem? That's how we keep the Torah. You don't sit in a sukkah, wave esrog lulav, eat matzah and blow shofar all at once. Some days you have one mitzvah, some days a different mitzvah. What's the problem with tzav l'tzav? The answer is that if one would ask how many things does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want us to do or not to do, and the answer is not taryag, because the Rambam says that hu ritzono echad, the Rabbanu Shalom is one and his will is one. So the Rabbanu Shalom doesn't want a lot of things. The Rabbanu Shalom's ratzon is one all-encompassing ratzon. So what is that all-encompassing ratzon? The Torah says, Mo Hashem Elokecha shoel mimoch, ki im liyiras Hashem Elokecha. That's it. The Chazal say, hein yiras Hashem. Yiras Hashem, hein is uni. In Greek, uni is one. That's all the Rabbanu Shalom wants. He wants you to be a Yirei Shamayim. So what's all these other mitzvahs? The answer is, what does it mean to be a Yirei Shamayim? In a nutshell, that everything you do, say, think, every second of your life should reflect the fact that you are created b'tselem Elokim, and you're a member of Mamleches Kohanim, the Goy Kadosh, and everything you do, say, and think should be appropriate to that designation. That is so overwhelming and so all-encompassing that it's impossible to relate to. So the Rebbeinu Shalom did us a favor, comparable to the following. Imagine a gigantic light bulb that is so bright and so big that you can't look at it. It's impossible to look at. It's too bright and too big. You take that light bulb and you encompass it in a globe. And you cut 613 windows all around the globe. And through each little window you can see one small portion of the light bulb which is seeable. How do you know what the whole light bulb looks like? If you look through all 613 windows consecutively, you'll get a composite picture of the light bulb. Those are mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are windows into that one all-encompassing Ratzon Hashem. And therefore there are two stages to mitzvahs. There's Shmiya Likol Hashem. That's listening and doing the mitzvah the way it's supposed to be done, Kil Chasa. Because if you don't do the mitzvah with meticulous concern to fulfill it properly, you'll never open the window. That's only the first love. But there's a second stage. And that is Shmiya Bikol Hashem. Listen into what the Rebbeinu Shalom said. Understand what the implications of that mitzvah is. Look into the window and see what that mitzvah represents, the Ratzon Hashem, that applies not just to that narrow mitzvah, but to your entire life and lifestyle and values and standards and goals. That's being sensitive to Ratzon Hashem, not just to the tzivui of the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's avoda. Avoda is connecting into Ratzon Hashem, Ratzisa Banu. The difference between a person who keeps a bunch of commands is like an Eved. An Eved does what he's told to do. He fulfills the commands that are given. But he's not interested in doing the Ratzon of his Adon. He's interested in doing as minimal, as much as he can. A child, on the other hand, wants to do the Ratzon of his parent. He wants to make his parent happy. So the difference between a person who acts like an Eved and a person who acts like a Ben is the idea of, are you doing the Ratzon of the Rebbeinu Shalom? Are you doing the mitzvah of the Rebbeinu Shalom? And they're not necessarily the same. The Devari starts with the mitzvahs. You can't do Ratzon Hashem without the mitzvahs. But it doesn't end with the mitzvah. Shabbos is a very narrow mitzvah. It comes once a week for a certain amount of hours. There are certain things that you do and certain things you're not allowed to do. So that's Shmiya Likol Hashem, someone who keeps Shabbos. Thank you. Someone who keeps Shabbos meticulously. But the whole week, he has one goal in life, earn another buck. So he's listened to Tzivui Hashem, listened to Likol Hashem. But what is Shabbos supposed to teach me? That this world's important to work for 6 days. Sheishis Yomim Tavo. But that's not the goal, that's only the means. The goal is Shabbos Olam Haba. So a person who makes his goal in life the opposite of what Shabbos is Shomea Likol Hashem. He kept Shabbos, but he's not Shomea Bikol Hashem. The example I love to give all the time, which my mother-in-law, Aleha Shalom, told me that every opportunity I have to say over this Maisa, I should please do it, because she's hoping that one time I will listen to it too. Maybe this is the time I'll give her neshama some nachas ruach. I heard this Maisa from my day school principal, who you all have either known or heard of, Rabbi Alexander Gross, Zecher Tzadik Livrach. I was about 12 or 13 when I heard this Maisa from him. And he told me his Rebbe, Reb Shaga Feibel Mendelovich, told him this Maisa. He was invited to eat Leil Shabbos by a balabas who wanted the covet of this Rosh Yeshiva eating in his home. The man came home from shul. The man knocked on his door, opened the door, looked inside, and turned white, was ready to faint. Shaga Feibel said something was obviously very wrong on the other side of that door, and I was curious, so I peeked in. And right away I saw the problem. The house was a mess, the table wasn't set, and the housewife looked like she just came from Mars. He said, I right away surmised what the problem was. This poor woman was tired from preparing for Shabbos, and she must have said to herself, I'm going to lie down for a few minutes and get up in plenty of time to put the house in order and set the table before the men come home from shul. And she fell into a deep sleep, and she didn't wake up until they knocked on the door. So the house was a mess, the table wasn't set, and this woman was hovering between some world and a different world. So Reb Shlomo Feivel said, I first assumed that this man was embarrassed, insulted to bring me into this house. But as things progressed, I realized that wasn't the problem. Because he understood that I understood this is not his fault. He wasn't sure. It's his wife's fault. What bothered him, turns out, was the fact that on the table were the 2 challahs without a challah cover. And this man was afraid that Rabbi Zev Leff would think he's an Amoritz Gomer and doesn't know you're supposed to cover the challahs. So to make it clear that that's also his wife's fault, he starts yelling at her. You are lazy, incompetent. Don't you know you're supposed to cover the challahs? Now Rabbi Zev Leff said, now I know that he knows you're supposed to cover the challahs. Said Rabbi Zev Leff, this is the most absurd thing I ever saw in my life. Why not? Because one of the reasons we cover the challahs when we make kiddush is because bread is more important than wine. And if we had a bread and wine party, you first make a motzi and then you make a gofen. But you can't do that Shabbos. You have to make kiddush first. So in order not to embarrass and insult the bread, we cover it. Shlo yira hapaz boshto. Now I don't know. Maybe my wife bakes insensitive challahs. But I never came home from shul, said something not nice to my challahs. They ran off the table, locked themselves in their room until I could appease them and bring them back to the table. It happened with my daughters a few times, never with my challahs. Personally, I never saw an embarrassed challah in my life, and if any of you have seen one, I'm sure somebody professional could help you. So what does that mean? Don't embarrass. The simplest idea is that if you condition yourself not to embarrass an inanimate object, you'll never come to embarrass a human being. And here's a man, says Reb Zev Leff, embarrassing his wife publicly in order to defend the honor of a piece of bread. Shmiya likol Hashem, 100%. He got the meaning down pat. Shmiya bikol Hashem, what does it mean? What are you supposed to learn from that? How are you supposed to apply it to your standards and values and lifestyle and character? Zero. So when a person is nisrashel ba'avodas Hashem, it means that his whole approach to Yiddishkeit is an external approach. He understands mitzvahs, but he doesn't understand Ratzon Hashem. What kind of lifestyle you're supposed to create. And people like that, I heard, saw the name of Rabbi Hollander Zatzal. He said people who want to lead a secular life, basically, their values, their standards, their way of life is far into Torah, but they want to be frum. There are people like that. They want to keep Tariq mitzvahs. But the Ratzon Hashem is missing. They don't have 613 mitzvahs. They have 613 problems. Because every mitzvah conflicts with their way of life. So people like that who look at Yiddishkeit in a totally external way, and Yisrashel ba'avodas Hashem, so they're very impressed with the externals of Yavan. Because the honest truth is that the externals of Yiddishkeit can't compete with the externals of Yavan. Much more impressive. But people who understand and see the inner kedusha of what Torah is, the inner pnimius of Torah, the Ratzon Hashem, so they're not affected. Because what can the externals of Yavan compete with the internal beauty and the internal importance of what Torah is? If you excuse the pun, but Greeks can't hold a candle to the pnimius of Torah. So that was the machala. The Chafetz Chaim says, in general, that sometimes when people don't appreciate what they have, so the Ribono Shel Olam threatens to have it taken away from them, or Rahman al-Islam takes it away from them. And when you're missing something, then you begin to appreciate it. What you have, you take for granted. And when it's taken away from you, you begin to appreciate what you had and want it back. So those who were influenced by the Chitzonius of Yavan, the Rebbe Shalom let the Yavanim make Zeras against us to take away the Pnimius of Torah. The Yavanim said, you can keep your external way of life as long as it doesn't become something internal. When they conquered nations, the Greeks, they let many of them serve their gods as long as it didn't contradict the way of life of Greece. This idea of deifying the externals, external beauty and wisdom and so on. And they therefore permitted us to learn Torah and to keep mitzvahs on the condition that it was lahashkicham Torah secha. You can learn Torah. Everybody has their own folklore. You can have your folklore too. But when it becomes Torah Hashem and it becomes a way of life, that we're not interested. And therefore, Torah Shebichsav, they said, fine. Torah Shebichsav you could have. But not Torah Shebal Peh. You can't forget Torah Shebichsav. It's written. You can forget Torah Shebal Peh. The Torah Shebal Peh, the Mishnahs and the Neshama of the Torah. The goof of Torah is Torah Shebichsav. But it looks like just a bunch of do's and don'ts and a bunch of stories. What makes it alive, what makes it a way of life, is Torah Shebal Peh, Esek HaTorah, Omal HaTorah. So they said you can have your Torah Shebichsav, your folklore, but don't give it life. They made Gzeras against Torah Shebal Peh, Lashkicham Torah Secho, Ulaha'avira Mechukei Ritzonecho. You can keep mitzvahs, but not Chukei Ritzonecho. A chok means as framework. A framework of Ratzon Hashem we don't want. That's a different way of life. You want to keep do's and don'ts? Every nation has their customs. You can keep your customs too, as long as it doesn't conflict with the Greek way of life. And Chukei Ritzonecho conflicts with our way of life. And therefore, the Yavanim made Gzeras to eradicate the Pnimius HaTorah. What do they make Gzeras against? So the more famous ones are Shabbos, Bris Milah, and Rosh Chodesh. Because that's the neshama of everything in the world. Shabbos is the neshama, the inner kedusha of this physical world. 6 days you work is a physical world. Shabbos gives a neshama of kedusha of Olam Haba that's introduced into this Olam Hazeh. Bris Milah is the inner kedusha, the neshama of the body. The body is an external physical being. What gives it kedusha is a neshama. And Bris Milah represents the fact that this body has a connection to the Rabbanu Shalom. There's a neshama to this body. It's not just a davar chitzoni. And Rosh Chodesh gives kedusha, inner kedusha to Zman, as Einstein said. But he was preceded by Chazal by many, many years. That time is a fourth dimension. Time is also something that can be an external thing, or it can be infused with holiness. That's Rosh Chodesh, Kiddush HaChodesh, Mekadosh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. But the Rambam, based on Midrashim, adds 2 more Gzeras that the Yavanim made. Pashtu Yedeihem b'Venosam u'b'Mamonam. They also make Gzeras against Jewish women and Jewish money. Let's start with the money first. What was a Gzera against money? Everybody knows the Medrash, Kisva, Keren Hashor, Ein Lanu Chelik Belokei Yisrael. But the Medrash says it wasn't only Keren Hashor, but every material thing that a Jew owned, he had to engrave on it, Ein Lanu Chelik Belokei Yisrael. Why? Because in the nations of the world, the secular world, money is an external value to itself. You don't even have to use it. Just have it. And that makes you somebody. Tzadikim, Chazal say, next week's Sedra, Tzadikim, Chavivim, Mamonam, Yosem Igufan. Learn from Yaakov Avinu. He went back for some pachim ktanim that he forgot, put his life in danger. We see that tzaddikim, chavivim, aleim, amonim, yosem, igufan. That's a tzaddik. I would imagine tzaddikim don't care about money at all. Chazal say the opposite. Tzaddikim, their money is more precious than their own body. That's a tzaddik. Moshe Feinstein explains that when Yaakov and Esav meet, and Yaakov had sent Esav a very expensive present, so Esav tells Yaakov, keep your present, yesh li rav, I have more than I need. I don't need your presents. And Yaakov answers, no, Esav, please keep it. Ki yesh li kol, I have everything I need. Says Moshe Feinstein, if anything, Yaakov should have said, yesh li rav, I have more than I need. He was a rich man. He wouldn't have been happy to be mistapik b'muad, to be a poor man. Yaakov had more than he needs. On the other hand, Esav, okay, could say he has more, but he wants more too. But it's out of character for Yaakov to say, a rich man, yesh li kol. Says Moshe, no. HaKadosh Baruch Hu apportions out to every individual what they need for their avodas Hashem. You come into this world, you get a part in the play. It's a major play that the Rabban Shem created, the shleimus of what Olam Hazeh is supposed to be, and everybody has a part in that play. When you get your part, so you get a costume, that's called your body. And you also get material possessions, those are the props to fulfill your part, your topkin in this world. No one can say they have more than they need. If you're the court jester in the play, you have 10 props and 5 changes of clothing. If you're the king or the queen, you have 1 robe and you have 1 scepter. So the court jester says, I have more than I need. No, you don't. You have exactly what you need to be the court jester. And the king has exactly what he needs to be the king. There's no such thing as more than you need. You have got what you need. So tzaddik, Yaakov Avinu says, yesh li kol. Only Esav can say I have more because his idea of money is what gives me pleasure. So I have more than I could use less pleasure. I can use more pleasure too. Mamela, tzaddik looks at his body as something that was given to him to serve the Rabban Shalom. The same way he looks at his money, something given to him to serve the Rabban Shalom. Both of them are chavivim. They're both very precious because they're kelim to be used for avodas Hashem. But Chazal say that Aidi de Torach be chaviv le. The more effort you put into something, the more precious it is. It doesn't say a tzaddik values his money more than his body. That's absurd. If you don't have a body, what's the money worth? It says chaviv, it's more precious to him. Why? Because how much effort you have to put into getting your body? 0. It's a birthday present. Your first birthday, you got a body. How much effort do you have to put into maintaining your body? Probably a lot. And how much effort do you have to put into using your body? A lot. So out of 3 efforts, only 2 apply to the body. But how about to your money? So if tzaddikim would steal, so maybe they get the money easy too. But the Gemara says, tzaddikim chavivim aleim amonim yosem igufam v'kol kach lama shein postim yadeim begezel. They don't steal, so they earn every penny honestly. That's a lot of effort. So they have to put effort into getting the money and to maintaining it and to use it. So which one is more effort? The money over the body. So chavivim amonim yosem igufam. So Mamela, the Yevonim said, Jewish money, we want you to have money like we have money. Ein lanu chelet b'elokei Yisrael. Your money has nothing to do with God. Your money has to do with your pocket, and that's it. That was one mistake against Mamona. And against the women in the secular world, even today in the liberated, modern world, women still are judged on their external attributes. How do I know? Because they still have contests. Miss Universe, Miss America, Miss Israel. And even though they say that they've refined it, and they have the women speaking about their careers and reading their poetry, But since it's done in bathing suits, I have the feeling that it's not the poetry and the careers that are the ikr. That's in the secular world. In the Torah world, women are the foundation of Kedushas Yisrael. Why so? Very simple. Because unless you are a ger or a giores, the only factor that determines who has Nishmas Yisrael Kedosha or not is one factor, who your mother was. If your mother was a Poshet Yidna, your father could have been Genghis Khan, and you're a Yid with a Neshama Kedosha. And if your father and your mother was not Jewish, your father could have been the biggest tzaddik in the world. You don't have a Neshama Kedosha. So the only factor that creates a Yiddish Neshama, and Neshama Kedosha, is a mother. And up until recently, mothers were women. So women are the... women are the foundation of Kedushas Yisrael. So they make gzeiras against women. What do? They made a gzeira to be mechalel and metame Kedushas Yisrael. And they asked women from being Mekayim Tarasa Mishpacha. Those were two Gzeiras. And that's why by the Yevonim we don't find that they wanted to destroy anything. They could have destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. They didn't. What do we find by the Yevonim? Two things. Metame u'mechalel. They wanted to be Metame Klal Yisrael and Mechalel. What do those words mean? Mechalel comes from the word halal. Halal means a void, right? A vacuum. A dead body is a halal. He's missing a neshama. He just has an external body. The outer space is a void. Halal hashamayim. And a chalil is a flute because it's hollow on the inside. In fact, I'm sure that the etymology of the word halal has a connection to the etymology of the word hollow. Same word, halal and hollow, especially if you're Russian. The halal and the hollow sound almost the same. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to hollow us out, take away the inner kedusha and leave only the externals, and that's what Tumah is. The Rishonim say whenever there was kedusha that occupied a place and it left, the vacuum that's left is either Tumah or the Tumah attacks that vacuum and seeks to fill it up. But that's what the Tameh or L'chalo means. That's what they wanted to do. And when the inner pnimius of Torah was taken away, threatened to be taken away, then Yidden began to appreciate it, like the Chafetz Chaim says. And when they began to appreciate it, it started the process of healing. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom was ma'orer the Kohanim, not the Chayolim. Soldiers weren't the ones who saved Klal Yisrael. It was the inner pnimius of Klal Yisrael, the Kohanim, that were able to go against the Greeks. And that was the koach of the Chashmonaim. They were able to go against all of the gzeiras of the Yevonim. It's represented by their name, Chashmonaim. The Ches is Chodesh, the Shin is Shabbos, the Mem is Mila and Mamam, the Nun is Nida, and the Aleph Eshes Ish. Those were the gzeiras of the Yevonim, and that's what the koach of the Chashmonaim had, to go against those gzeiras. And that really was the message of the miracle of Hanukkah. It says, Masarta giborim biyad chaloshim, rabim biyad ma'atim, tmeim biyad tahorim, rishoyim biyad tzadikim, bezeidim biyad oskei sorosecha. So they ask, I understand it's a miracle if the chaloshim and the ma'atim win over the giborim and the rabbim. Because b'derech hateba, the opposite happens. But what's the miracle that the tmeim fall in the hands of the tahorim and the Rishoyim biyad tzadikim, there's some unwritten law of nature that Rishoyim and Tmeim and Zaydim always win, and if the Tahorim and Tzadikim win, it's a nace. Why is that a nace? But I think it means something different. What it means is the following. The Yevonim had the physical edge. They were Giborim and they were Rabbim. But we won not because we were weak and because we were few. We won despite the fact that we were weak and few. So why did we win? Because we had the spiritual edge. Because we were Tahorim and we were Tzadikim and we were Oskei Sorasecha. The physical and the spiritual do not have to conflict. But when they do, and it's one or the other, the nace of Hanukkah showed the Pnimius was more important than the Chitzonius. And the Yidden who were Tahorim and Tzadikim and Oskei Sorasecha won over the Yevonim who were Giborim and Rabbim. And that, in fact, is the message of the miracle of the oil. It doesn't make a difference how much oil you have. It's not kamos, it's not amount, it's not quantity. But you can have a ton of it. But if it's not tahar, it's worthless. And you can have a little one flask. But if it's tahar, it'll last you as long as you need. The ikar is not the chitzonius. The ikar is the pnimius. And that is the message of the menorah. It says in Zechariah, the Haftorah of Hanukkah, what is the message of the menorah? Zechariah was asked, and he was told. I'll tell you what the message is that Rabbi Zev said. Lo b'chayil, v'lo b'koach, ki im beruchi omer Hashem. That is what the menorah represents. How so? The menorah was a beautiful kli. Chitzonius-wise, solid gold, with all of the kaftorim and prachim. But the menorah was worthless if you didn't light, that pnimius, that kedusha candle on it. It only was important if you used it to light a candle. If not, it had no use. The ikar of that whole beautiful chitzonius menorah was to serve that candle which represents the inner pnimius of Kedusha. That is what the message of Hanukkah is. We stand by our neiros and we sing Maoz Sur. What does Maoz Sur represent? We mention all these Malchios, Mitzrayim and Bavel, and Poras, and Modai, and Edom. Except for Edom, they all don't exist anymore. They're all in the history books. They had everything going for them physically. They had land, and they had armies, and they had might and money, and we had none of that. And they're not standing by any candle singing about us. They're in the history books. They don't exist. And we're standing and still exist and singing about them. Why? Because of those candles. Because we have that pnimius, and that's misgaber on what they had, that chitzonius. And therefore, every Hanukkah contains everything the Yevonim wanted to take away because of the tzara. The Rebbeinu Shem gave us a better appreciation. He gave us back everything they wanted to take away. V'yeser se'es, v'yeser oz. Every Hanukkah has 8 days, keneged bris milah. Every Hanukkah has at least one Shabbos and sometimes two. And it's not Stam Shabbos, it's Shabbos Hanukkah. So we got an extra push of Shabbos from Hanukkah. Every Hanukkah has the idea of Hanukkah Geld. The Momon also played a part, which the Yevonim wanted to take away. Every Hanukkah, women have an extra special part in Hanukkah. They don't do malacha when the candles are lit. So everything, and every Hanukkah has in it Rosh Chodesh Teves. So everything the Yevonim wanted to take away was given back in Hanukkah with extra measure. Because when you appreciate something, so then it means much more to you. And that's what the breaking of our legs of Hanukkah, all the gzeros of Hanukkah achieved. And that's why the Svarim point out that the total number of candles is 36, which represents the Or Hagonus, the Or Hagonus, that original Or, the pneumius of the world, lasted for 36 hours. 24 hours on Shabbos and 12 hours on Friday, and then it was hidden away. It was hidden away in the Torah. And Hanukkah brings out that Or Hagonus, where you don't see just the external world, you're able to see that inner light that the world represents. Could be for that reason also. It's an interesting halacha by Hanukkah, which I don't think that most people understand. And that is, they weren't l'sak in achila v'shtiya, mishta v'simcha on Hanukkah. On the other hand, if you have a mishta on Hanukkah and you say halal v'hodah to the Rabbanu Shalom, it becomes a sudas mitzvah. But that doesn't apply any other time. I can't eat lunch today and say halal v'hodah in the middle of lunch and make it a sudas mitzvah. The suda remains a suda. But the idea is that on Hanukkah you want to understand that the externals and themselves are not important, but if you infuse in those externals